So now, ladies and gentlemen, live and in colour, it's Mr. Wayne Lovejuice.
The other day I produced a Louis, had a chat with an interesting chappie who said that the YouTube algorithms really aren't that happy. If a channel only broadcasts once a week, so we decided we could text ya whenever we've got a piece of news in our new book on the track Xtra. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and the reason that I am sitting lolling back on a pile of pillows as if I was some consumptive Victorian lady with even more health problems than I have myself is because I managed to knacker both of my feet, and the people at Bideford Hospital have told me if I don't look after my feet I'm going to lose one or both of them, and that is not something that really fills me with delight. So I am told that I have to keep my feet off the ground. So I am sitting here with my feet back and lolling back as a result of that, with my feet up on a stool which my granddad made for me when I was a very little boy, and all my life I have called the granddad stool. And I have my feet up on the granddad stool, and it's very comfortable. And if you're listening, Granddad, from wherever in the afterlife you may be, thank you. Now, regular viewers of On the Track Extra will know that every Wednesday evening at 6:30 we bring you a shorter show than we do on Saturdays, and you'll also be aware that whenever my old friend Richard Freeman comes to visit, we do book reviews. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Richard. What is this week's book, Richie Poos?
It's the Fortean classic by Janet and Colin Bord, Alien Animals. Now, I first got this back in about 1980 when I was 10, and I sent off after seeing a advert in the part work The Unexplained. And I read this book way before I read any of Bernard Heuvelmann's books, and it was a unique take on monsters, because they look at it from the perspective of these things being supernatural entities, and they say yes, there are real flesh and blood cryptids, but some of them act and behave in a way that makes no sense for a flesh and blood animal. They might appear in an environment that can't possibly support them. They might appear and then disappear very quickly. They seem impervious to bullets. They are seen alongside other phenomena like UFOs and poltergeist outbreaks, and in general they behave in a very, very strange way. And there are different categories. There are lake monsters, flying monsters, black dogs, alien big cats, and big hairy monsters. So it's most of the global monster template, which I was to postulate years and years later. And there's a chapter on each of these, and then a sort of a summing up chapter of what the hell they think is going on. And it was a wonderful book, absolutely fantastic. And it's got a picture of Frank Kluski there, manifesting a huge bird like a nightjar on his head. Naked witches trying to evoke Morgar with Doc Shields. Doc Shields features prominently in this book. A headless phantom Victorian dog. The Owl Man. This is my first exposure to the Owl Man in this book. Shortly afterwards I read Graham McEwan's Mystery Animals of Great Britain and Ireland, which we will also have to review at some point. But this was the first exposure I'd ever had to the Owl Man. and I thought it was an absolutely great book, and I still love it. And we were going to reprint this. We were going to do a new edition with CSZ Press, and one of our artists, Sam Wallace, had done a modern version of this cover and he'd done a great job, but they pulled out at the last moment. Janet and Colin Bord pulled out at the last moment, and it never got done, which I think is a crying shame.
It's always been a book I've been very fond of. When you were saying how you'd first got hold of it when you were 10, I first got hold of it when I was somewhere in my late 20s, and I honestly can't remember when. I think that I got it from Steve Shipp, who at the time ran a second-hand Fortean book service from his home in, what's the place, Seaton in South Devon. And I used to buy an enormous number of books from him. In fact, probably the whole kernel of my Fortean book collection came to me via Steve Shipp. So I think I probably got this book from him as well. And I agree with Richard, it's a smashing book. It told me about all sorts of things I didn't know. For example, I didn't know that there was a strange ostrich-like creature living, or at least being sighted, near the village of Lifton in northwest Devon. And every time I've been through Lifton since, I've always hoped to see a giant ostrich jumping out from the woods for me, but it's never happened. It wasn't my first view of Doc Shields and the Owlman or Morgar. Basically, I got my grounding in all the Shieldsiana, if you like, from Graham McEwan's book. But the stuff that Janet and Colin Bord put in this book filled up the gaps, and I think they did a smashing job. It's a remarkable, wonderful book, and it's the sort of book which, sadly, these days nobody seems to publish. And like Richard, the fact that we weren't in the end able to publish it ourselves is one of my enduring sadnesses about my career as a Fortean publisher. But Janet and Colin, thank you so much for giving me so many hours of pleasure reading and rereading this book and helping so much with my career as a Fortean author. Thank you, my dears. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end for this episode, I'm afraid. I'd just like to say a big thank you. I've already said thank you to Janet and Colin Bord, but I'd like to say a big thank you to Richard Freeman, who's a dear, sweet fellow, more like a brother than a friend and colleague. I have been collaborating with him doing weird stuff for the last 25 years plus, and I intend to carry on collaborating with him for the rest of my life. So, as I hope that I'm not going to drop down dead just yet, you'll be seeing quite a lot of Richard Freeman over the coming months and years on this show, and also in the stuff that we write and also on the CFZ website. So, I hope you enjoyed it and you found it edifying, entertaining, educational. I can never remember more than 3 of the things. Give me another word, Rich. Edifying, educational, entertaining.
Egregious.
Egregious. Yeah, egregious in the true meaning of the book, not in the true meaning of the word, but not in the way that it seems to mean now. But thank you for watching, and I will be back on Saturday. And what are we doing on Saturday? I'll be able to tell you in a second, because I've suddenly started having a list of what I'm doing. So what are we going to be doing on Saturday? We're going to be talking about a new species of anaconda and the implications of this new discovery for the search for giant anacondas that Richard has been involved with for many years. And I will also be talking about some of the problems which Richard has had recently in expeditions, and also the search for cryptic tigers. So I hope to goodness you're going to be there to watch us, because if you are there, Miss Crennan? Come on, McCrennan, get used to it. If you're there to see us, I'll be seeing you